So now it's my turn to share with you one of the things that is really so interesting that somebody actually counted. There are 304,805 letters in a Sefer Torah. Did you know that? I know some of you did. So, and for all of those letters, there are rabbis who try to figure out all through these ages with different customs and different scripts on how to actually write a Torah scroll, and they would try and find as many opportunities as possible where they would share a little something. So I'm going to show you a couple of little pictures from our Torah. This is the Bronstein family Torah that our congregation wrote just a few years ago, and this is the very first panel. In your own, you can, if you have a need to see me, I don't encourage it, but if you did, instead of just the little box in the corner, you're able to have like maybe a side-by-side view. But I'm going to just show really quickly a few things that I think would be a little fun. Bereshit, a lot of letters in the Torah are going to have a special kind of a special letter. Sometimes it's going to be bigger, sometimes it's going to be smaller. And for Bereshit, here's one of the times when you're able to see a larger letter. I think everybody will be able to see it on there. Even if you're on a tablet, you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. And one of the things that's always neat to me is that Bereshit, when it says God began to create, it starts with the letter Bet. It doesn't start with the letter Aleph. Even the Talmud, when you start to read the pages of the Talmud, it starts with page 2. You can never start with Aleph. Our rabbis didn't want us, and our writers didn't want us to say that we can learn everything. There's always going to be something like the letter Aleph, which is silent. It can't be known. And I think that is something that is really quite extraordinary. So moving from Aleph, there we go. We're going to go to the next slide. Oh, look at that, it's working. Not everybody knows that when you read the 10 Commandments, that it looks a little bit different. Sometimes our sages wanted to really emphasize different kinds of writings. And so here is the second part where it says, Kaved et avicha vet amecha, you should honor your father and your mother. That's number 5 in the 10 Commandments. That's kind of the bridge between the commandments that are between us and God and between human beings. The ones that follow, like don't murder, which I think is a good idea, these are all over here. The ones relating to God are before this one. But honoring your parents is number 5 because it's the bridge. Because God is sort of like an ultimate parent. So that's a little bit of that idea. I have to get rid of my circle. Let's see. Clear. All drawings. Thank you. I'm going back and showing you the next slide. Here in the book of Exodus, you get to finally see a little bit more up close and personal. You get to see the Song of the Sea. We see this poem in the book of Exodus immediately following our liberation from Egypt. The sea closes behind us, and Moses and the people sing this song. Right over here, you're able to see Mi Chamocha Ba'elim Adonai. That's part of our liturgy, the message of redemption, right? Mi Kamocha Nedar Ba'Kodesh. I'm kind of digging the spotlight feature. This is part of our liturgy. And here, you're able to see so much more clearly what is in our text. The whole page is going to look like this, and it's going to be like this in every Torah scroll you look at. Ashkenazi Torahs, Sephardic, Mizrahi Torahs has the same tradition. One of the other things that I always remember is that this special poem, it's designed this way because it reminds us, even in our freedom, about how we used to make bricks back in Egypt. So here are your bricks. We can never take a moment of recognizing our freedom without remembering where we came from. Between the books, you're going to see a big space. So up here is the book of Exodus, and down below is going to be the book of Leviticus. And again, if we make it a little bit bigger, I want to show you something else at the very beginning of Leviticus. It's kind of neat because it's the very first word. Oh, I went to the wrong spot. Please hold. Here's my mouse. That was Exodus. Very good. So now, if we were to show you the bottom of this page, it's going to see Vayikra right over here. Now, the funny thing is that this picture of our Torah was taken before it was completed. Some of you might remember, some of you are new, but my first year was our 50th anniversary at the synagogue. The scribe, the sofer, did outlines of all of the words. And then we had congregants fill in the letters. We didn't trust you folks enough to write the letters yourselves. So we have all of these outlines. But if you were to look right over here at the very end of that word, Vayikra, which is about God calling to Moses, the aleph that I'm circling is a little bit smaller. We have bigger letters like I showed you with a bet in Bereshit. We have smaller letters like this Vayikra. And this is perhaps the most famous of our small letters. The explanation given by one rabbinic commentary, the Baal HaTurim, is that Moses was a very humble man. And if you did not include this aleph, the word would be Vayikir. And that could just be about visiting. So the writers of the Torah didn't want Moses to think that God was just visiting Moses. This wasn't a chance encounter. Moses was really important. And so they added in this aleph to say that God called Moses directly. It's kind of amazing to me that we can talk about Moses, our greatest of leaders, the greatest of prophets, being such a humble person, that he didn't want the aleph at the end. The other possibility, of course, is because there's always more than one explanation, is that it's not God who's so humble, but that's not Moses who's so humble, but it's God. We know of God as Ani, or in biblical Hebrew, Anochi, which is like I, as in I am going to the store. If this is a godly I, God is contracting. God is making God's own I smaller in order to make room for Moses. That, I think, is something that's a beautiful teaching, that if God is able to contract and make room for others, even those imperfect people, well, I think we could probably do a better job at that too. Now, one of the really cool things here, in this next page, we are now in the book of Leviticus. I only have a few more to show you. And in this section of Leviticus, right over here is the word gachon. This is my favorite part of the whole Torah. In the middle of gachon, that's a chet, by the way, with like a little mountain on it. The word letter after that is a vav. The vav is just a straight line that goes up and down, but it's bigger. It's bigger than everything else. Can you see that okay? Do I need to make it a little bit bigger for you? If you look at this gachon, which means belly, here I'm going to make it even a little bit bigger. That's better. If you see gachon, now I'm over here. The vav is bigger than the other letters. And this is a part of a conversation that you're not allowed to eat anything that crawls on its belly. So you can't eat as much as you want to snakes or worms or other kinds of critters like that. But it's interesting to me that Vav is the middle letter of the entire Torah. It's kind of cool. And by the way, I did not check, but it is kind of beautiful, amazing that the middle letter is a Vav that just stands straight in a word that means belly. So what does that tell us? Walk tall in this world. Be kind of, if we can go through our lives walking tall, standing tall, maybe being brave, maybe being righteous, maybe walking tall is the image we have of sharing our compassion, of having that sense of empathy, not to slither on our bellies and to cheat and to curse and to hurt others, not to engage like the snake. Poor snakes, I know, they always get a bum rap. But for us to take the image of walking tall. So here we have that Vav. And I thought that would be something interesting to share with you. Okay, I'm almost done. I hope you're enjoying my tour of our Torah. This is the book of Numbers, and it's the priestly blessing. And if we look right over here, Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. That's the section where it says, may God bless you and keep you. May God look kindly upon you and be gracious to you. Chen is the word for grace. And Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. That God should lift up God's face. I often say how we hope that God reaches out to you with tenderness and gives you, of course, shalom. Not just peace, as in no fighting, but peace as in wholeness. The real idea of shalom isn't no war, no fighting, like peace is in English. It's about wholeness. Okay, we're coming to the end. One of the things, whenever we unroll the Torah scroll, I always, without exception, teach this section of the Torah. We are in the Torah portion of Pinchas. And Pinchas was rewarded for, I have to find it. Pinchas is rewarded because he was a zealot. He slayed people. Nope, that's not it. He slayed people for going against what God wanted in terms of the idea of obedience and of caring for one another. They saw he stabbed people. In fact, he impaled them. He impaled them as there were people being sexually active. And it was against what God wanted. And so in order to protect the covenant and protect the brit, he killed them. For many of us, we think that it is kind of too far. It doesn't make sense to be that kind of a vigilante, or shalom is or a vigilante, or is not really representing shalom, being somebody who pursues peace. The thing that's interesting is right over here where we see his name. Sorry, it took me a little bit, but it's kind of hard to talk and to scroll at the same time. That's Pinchas. If you are to look at his name, the second letter that is over here, the Yud, right over there, it's a little smaller. Look at this Yud. Look at this Yud. Look at any other Yud that is in this area. That Yud is considerably smaller and it's easier to miss. Pinchas, who's rewarded for being a zealot and executing people with no trial, the Yud often is representative of God's name. Yud He Vav He is God's name. We don't know how to pronounce it, only know how to spell it. When we say Adonai, we often are able to say Yud Yud. That's what we see. But this Yud is smaller. Maybe the rabbis are telling us that on some level there's a reward for being stringent and following the rules, but maybe their commentary is Pinchas diminished himself and diminished God by executing with no jury trial, which is a part of our tradition. All the way back in Exodus, we see, and Leviticus, and in Numbers and Deuteronomy, we see examples of courts being established. So if that's perhaps the case, look over here. Another word that I will circle for you is the word shalom. If you see here, this is the word briti, the covenant of shalom. Now that you find that shalom, I'm going to make it larger for you. If I make it even larger, I'll find it again, don't worry. It's right over here. Do you see that? Look at the vav. The vav is the third letter. It's right where my little marker is. In Jewish tradition, you're not allowed to have any marks in a letter. They must be complete. Otherwise, if the letter's broken, so is the Torah, because each letter represents somebody in our Jewish community. And if one is broken, then all are broken and the Torah isn't kosher, and then you can't read from it. But that little line, I hope you can see that. Can some of you nod if you can see it? Do I have to make it bigger? Oh, you can see it. Oh, thank God. So that's purposeful. That's not a crack. That is a line that the rabbis write in every Torah because that shalom is broken. Any shalom that comes from a sword or a spear or a gun is going to be imperfect. It is not holistic. It's not really filled with shalom. And so the rabbis in their commentaries make a line through it in some Torahs, and in this Torah, you see a tiny little space in the stem. Make sense? Good. If not, I don't know that, but you can write me an email and I'll tell you more about it later. Okay, I think we're at the end. The end, it's good to show you the Shema. It's right over here. It's right over here in that top line. And you always see the ayin bigger and a dalet bigger. Ayin and dalet together, just like it says in the prayer book, is a new letter. It's the letter Eid, a word, I'm sorry. The word is Eid, which means witness. Whenever you say the Shema, you are acting like a witness and giving testimony to only one God. I think I should end. I skipped one. I always include this too, because 9/11 just passed a month ago. And I remember leading my minyan the week of September 11th. And when we raised up the Torah for Hagbah to show, inadvertently, we held it up looking like this. I had no idea that the Twin Towers were in that Torah portion. It was one of the heaviest and most moving moments of my life, to see the clouds and these two, columns. And without realizing that we were reading the Torah portion Hazinu, we just lifted it up. And we all saw the towers at that moment. The very last lines of Deuteronomy are right here. I'm going to show you the bottom. And again, this was the Torah scroll that we were using when we were having people fill in the letters. Every family came who filled in one of these letters. We didn't let them fill in God's name. That the Sofer did themselves. But otherwise, the Sofer did only some of the hard parts and then did the outline. This is where we say, there was never again, over here, I'll show you. There was never again a prophet in Israel like Moses. And God knew Moses panim al panim, face to face. So for the last little taste of Simchat Torah, Holly is going to chant right from here, V'lo kam navi od, and we're going to give you a taste of Bereshit, not the traditional readings, just a couple of verses for a little taste. And because on Simchat Torah, we're supposed to finish reading the book of Deuteronomy, and then right away, without hesitation, begin the book of Genesis. So if you will join Holly in saying the blessing for a Torah reading, she is going to lead it for us, and you can join along with her. She will do the end of Deuteronomy, and then we'll do Bereshit, and then we'll do the closing blessing. Okay.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai hamvarach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai hamvarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. V'lo kam navi od beYisrael k'Moshe, asher yida'o Adonai panim el panim, l'chol ha'otot v'hamoftim, asher shalachol Adonai la'asot be'eretz Mitzrayim, לפרעה ולכל עבדיו ולכל ארצו ולכל היד החזקה ולכל המורא הגדול אשר עשה משה בעיני כל ישראל. Reshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, ve'haaretz hayta tohu vavohu ve'choshech al penei tehom, ve'ruach Elohim merachefet al penei hamayim. Vayomer Elohim yehi or, vayehi or. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. So one last thing, when you read the end of Deuteronomy, it ends with a lamed. When you begin the very next chapter, back in the book of Genesis, the very beginning of the Torah, it starts with a bet. A lev and a bet is lev, which means heart. So I am grateful for your heart. I am grateful for the heart of this congregation, for all of the people who share their hearts in order to create a place where we feel safe and an opportunity for us to find community and a place where we can grow and hopefully be inspired. And I'm glad that I hope this was helpful and good and interesting. It's not the way I wanted to celebrate Simchat Torah with you. We say that a lot, but I hope that it was a good little taste for Simchat Torah. Let's move. Alinu l'shabech, 580.